Hi babe, this is video 10 of To Shay Love Mom. I told you that I wanted to talk to you about a place called Beth Sarim. This was a place that soon after Rutherford took over the society from Russell, he started talking about a few things that led up to him building Beth Sarim. So the first thing I want to kind of go over is about the timeline that we're talking about. It was in the early 1900s, around 1917 is when Rutherford took over the society. And it was during the 1910s that World War I happened. So near the 1920s, people were kind of coming out of that. It was a very unsettling time. A lot of things had happened. It was scary. Things were changing a lot from the old ways, which were mostly farming and, families living very close together, to more getting out in the whole world and having some things change. One of the big things going on was the prohibition of alcohol, and that led to people called bootleggers trying to illegally distribute the alcohol. And that led to a rise in crime and organized crime rings and the mafia. So there were a lot of kind of bad things happening around this time, and probably people were pretty scared of those changes. There was also tension between immigrants from the European nations, and they were affiliated with communists. So there were actually terrorist attacks throughout the United States and the eastern areas of that. So during that time in the society, Rutherford took over. And here are some things that he was talking about at that time. He said in 1917, "No doubt Satan believed the millennial kingdom was due to be set up in 1915. Be that as it may, there is evidence that the establishment of the kingdom in Palestine will probably be in 1925, 10 years later than we once calculated." And that was in the Studies of the Scriptures, Volume 7, The Finished Mystery. In 1918, he said, "Therefore, we may confidently expect that 1925 will mark the return of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the faithful prophets of old, particularly those named by the apostles in Hebrews 11, to the condition of human perfection." And that was in the book Millions Now Living Will Never Die, page 89. He also spoke in 1924 in a book, The Way to Paradise, page 226. He said, "No doubt many boys and girls who read this book will live to see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Daniel, and those other men of old come forth in the glory of their better resurrection of perfect in mind and body. It will not take long for Christ to appoint them to their post of honor and authority as his earthly representatives. The world and all the present conveniences will seem strange to them at first, but they will soon become accustomed to the new methods. They may have some amusing experiences at first, for they have never saw telephones, radios, automobiles, electric lights, airplanes, steam engines, and many other things so familiar to us." So he was really confident and confidently saying that these men were going to be resurrected in 1925. Well, 1925 came and went. So in 1926 in the Watchtower, he said, "Some anticipated that the work would end in 1925, but the Lord did not state so. The difficulty was that the Friends inflated their imaginations beyond reason, and that when their imaginations burst asunder, they were inclined to throw away everything." So here he really just blames whoever was saying that that was going to happen in 1925, even though those were his words that I read before. So he didn't give up the idea, though, of the resurrection of those kings. In fact, it was in the 1930s that he had this home, Beth Sarim, built. The 1930s are what is the beginning of the Great Depression. So many people are you know, very poor, living in poverty. I've heard stories from grandma, and you might hear stories too from your other grandmas, but they had ration cards. They had to have ration sugar, ration flour, ration butter. They couldn't just get what they wanted. So it was a really pretty, you know, tough time in history. But here he was building this place called Beth Sarim, and I found some details on it. It was a 5,100 square foot mansion in California. He put the deed of this place in the name of, let me just read it to you. I've got the whole deed pulled up. Okay, so it says, both the grantor and the grantee, the said Joseph F. Rutherford, are fully persuaded from the Bible testimony, which is the word of Jehovah God, and from extraneous evidence that God's kingdom is now in course of establishment, and that it will result beneficially to the peoples of the earth, that the governing power and authority will be invisible to men, but the kingdom of God will have visible representatives on earth, who will have charge of the affairs of the nations under the supervision of the invisible ruler Christ, that among those who will thus be the faithful representatives and visible governors of the world will be David, who was once king over Israel, and Gideon, and Barak, and Samson, and Jephthah, and Joseph, formerly the ruler of Egypt, and Samuel the prophet, and other faithful men who are named with approval in the Bible at Hebrews, the 11th chapter. The condition herein is that the said Watchtower Bible and Tract Society shall hold said title perpetually in trust for the use of any or all of the men above named as representatives of God's kingdom on earth, and that such men shall have possession and use of said property hereinforth described as they may deem for the best interest of the work in which they are engaged. So during this time when, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, regular people are struggling, he's here living in this mansion, and he used it from then out. It's mentioned in a few articles, and you might be able to research some things that the society has pointed out, but it's not really going into details of what he made it for. You have to kind of dig into the old books that I told you. I remember, though, a book in the library in Jefferson that me and your dad actually read that in the book that I had mentioned, where he said they would be seeing stuff for the first time. Those things, we thought it was pretty funny actually to look at that. I want to tell you again what that was. That was The Way to Paradise, 1924. So that was Beth Sarim. That was part of the Watchtower's history that not too many people heard about. I was very surprised myself when I read about it, but that's it. So I love you, babe. I'll make another video later.